They are not afraid of the strong. They are not afraid of the aggressive. They are afraid of the man who thinks, because the man who thinks is unpredictable. He doesn't repeat it, don't imitate, does not react as expected. He doesn't follow, don't bow, it's not sold. And that is intolerable. We live in a world that rewards being obedient, the repeater of ready-made sentences, the smiling servant, the cordial slave. But when a man starts to think for himself, something changes. The eyes change, the silence changes, the posture changes. He stops asking for permission and starts observing, and in that moment he becomes a mirror that reveals the ugliness of a programmed society, a mirror that destroys illusions, and no one wants to see themselves without makeup. That's why they fear the thinker, not because he screams, but because he sees. And see, in this world, it's an act of war. Nietzsche knew this. Did you know that true thought isolates? I knew that lucidity is a curse for the weak. Did you know that the conscious man is hated, not because of his evil, but for your freedom? Today, you will understand why thinking makes you dangerous, why the entire society conspires to keep you distracted, and why, deep down, are they all afraid of you? As long as you dare to think, the world starts to change when you start to think. But it doesn't change like you imagined. It doesn't open, does not welcome. He closes down. Because thinking is not a social gesture. Thinking is a disruption. Thinking is setting fire to the bridges that kept you within the herd. You begin to realize the absurdity of the conversations, the emptiness of routines, the stupidity of rituals. You start to hear what no one says and remaining silent in the face of the noise that everyone pretends to admire. The first punishment for thinking is isolation. You will not be applauded. It will be avoided because your look bothers you. Your presence hurts, and the worst part, you don't do anything. It's just there, too lucid to pretend to believe the same lies. Nietzsche said that the individual always has to fight not to be subjugated by the tribe. And if you try, it will be lonely. But if you don't try, you'll stop being a man. This is the thinker's crossroads. Or you adapt and cancel yourself out, or you think and you become a threat. You begin to realize that your questions are uncomfortable, that your silence disturbs more than 1,000 words, and that the deeper you go, the harder it is to come back. Silence becomes your new language, because explaining what you see is useless. They don't want to know. They want you to come back. They want you to be silent, but not the silence of the thinker. They want the silence of the obedient, but they are different silences. The first is full of presence, the second is full of fear, and you feel it. The silence of the misunderstood is dense. It's an internal battlefield. It is the price of conscience, but also it's the beginning of strength. Most cannot bear this silence. They run back to the noise, for comfortable noise of approval, to the prison that feels like home. But some, few, remain. And when they remain, something begins to be born. An invisible force, a psychic shield, a resistance that does not need to be explained, just felt. If you've ever felt this silence, if you've ever realized that thinking took you away from the world, it's because the process has begun, and no one who enters it comes out unscathed. If this is making sense, continue. They say they fear violence, but the truth is cruder. They fear autonomy. The screaming rebel can still be controlled. He still depends on the audience. He still responds, reacts, begs for attention. But the man who thinks silently, this cannot be guided, because he doesn't want to guide anyone. He just wants to see, and when he sees it, he destroys it. Because living in a society of commands is simple. You receive orders disguised as advice. It is tamed by applause, pushed by looks, educated by invisible punishments. Nobody needs to tell you what to do. They just show you what you should be, and they wait. They expect you to bow down for fear of rejection, out of hunger for belonging, for terror of loneliness. More to mind than you think. Break the cycle. She doesn't deny it out of childish rebellion. She denies it because she sees the trap. See the emotional collar that everyone carries around their neck. See the acceptance price, the amputation of one's own conscience. Nietzsche called this herd morality, a set of rules created by the weak to control anyone who dares to be free. The thinking mind does not accept this theater. She dismantles the backstage, unmasks the actors, and in doing so, he becomes the villain of the piece. Because thinking is above all denying. Deny the script, deny conditioning, deny the subtle manipulation that comes packaged in smiles. And whoever denies the command, it can no longer be predicted. You don't know if he'll smile or turn away, whether it will stay or disappear, whether you will agree or simply disappear. This is terrifying, because the social world is a dance, a choreography of programmed responses, and when someone stops dancing, he threatens to bring down the entire stage. That's why they want you busy, they want you distracted, they want you emotionally dependent, because if you stop and think, you escape. And when you escape, you reveal the prison. It's not about you. It's about what you show without saying. It's about their simple existence revealing what they try to hide. The farce of normality, the fragility of beliefs, the misery behind the trained smiles. You don't need to scream, not even fight. Just keep thinking, and they will fear you. If this truth is hitting you, wait until you see what happens when you start speaking the truth that no one can bear to hear. The truth doesn't scream. She whispers. She comes in through the cracks and destroys everything that is not solid. And that's why she's so feared, because it cannot be controlled, it cannot be embellished, it cannot be domesticated. The truth is wild, hard, no makeup, no cuts. And when a man thinks for himself, he begins to find truths that no one asked for, truths that hurt, truths that don't sell, truths that drive away. But he can no longer escape them, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You see the game in relationships, see the manipulation in the sweet words, see the emptiness behind the promises, see boredom disguised as routine, see slavery disguised as stability, and he starts talking, but not angry, clearly, and that destroys. Nietzsche wrote, "What is done out of love always happens beyond good and evil." What he wanted to say was simple and brutal. The truth does not follow the morals of the weak. She is not good, not me. She simply is. And that scares, because people build their lives on emotional crutches, fragile beliefs, children's narratives. When you tell the truth, you rip off those crutches. You break these stories. You destroy the artificial meaning that sustains others. And no one forgives that. You become the stranger, the ungrateful one, the insensitive, but the truth doesn't care about adjectives. It doesn't need to be accepted to be real. It just needs to be said, even if it hurts, even if it bleeds, and you start to realize that your every word is a blade. Not because you want to hurt, but because the world is full of open wounds hidden under bandages of illusion. You speak, and they react with hate, with contempt, afraid. But what they hate is not you. It is the mirror that your lucidity offers. It's the clarity that your presence causes. They don't want to know the truth. They want peace, even if this peace is made of lies. But you can no longer sleep peacefully pretending not to see. And that is your curse, but also his liberation, because when you embrace the truth, even if alone, even if hated, you are no longer part of the herd, and it starts to become dangerous. If this is bothering you, get ready. Because in the next chapter, you will understand why the simple presence of a conscious thinker is enough to destabilize any environment. You don't need to say anything. The train is not Levanta, nor give a speech. It is enough to be present. Just walk into a room and observe. Just listen, without reacting. Just realize, without pretending. And suddenly, you feel it. The climate changes, the looks are heavy, the masks shake because you are not part of the theater. You don't laugh at jokes, not impressed with status, does not validate the script, and that is unforgivable. Society is a poorly rehearsed play. Everyone knows they are pretending, but they pretend so well that they forget, until you appear. And with your silence, remember, with your look, it reveals. With its simple existence, it unmasks. Nietzsche understood that lucidity is a form of exile, because when you see beyond the surface, you stop playing the game. And whoever doesn't play breaks the system. You become the dissonant element, the crack in the wall, the stain on the perfect paint. They don't know how to explain why they bother you. They just know it's uncomfortable. You don't react as they expect. It is not justified. Don't try to please. And that kind of freedom, this emotional independence, this solid, inexplicable presence, destroy, because it effortlessly reveals emotional dependence on others. The fragility of those who live on approval, the lie of those who pretend to be strong to hide their fear. Your presence becomes a constant reminder of everything that others don't want to face. Mediocrity itself, cowardice itself, voluntary blindness itself. You don't need to attack, it just needs to continue being. Be someone who thinks for themselves. In a world that lives by reflex, it's like lighting a torch in a room full of ghosts. They will attack you. Not because you hurt them, but because you expose them. That's why the thinker scares more than the warrior, because the warrior can be defeated, but the thinker doesn't stick to the battlefield. He's on another plane. He plays another game. And there is no weapon against those who cannot be manipulated. If you have ever felt this discomfort from others, this weight on the environments, this discomfort with simply existing lucidly, know it's because you've already crossed a limit. And from then on, there is no turning back, or you go back to sleep, or accept your fate of being the discomfort the world tries to avoid. In the next chapter, you will understand why the weak cannot stand this presence, and why they have learned to hate everything that reveals them. They won't say they hate you. They will laugh at you. They'll call you cold, arrogant, of too intense. But behind those words, there is fear, there is resentment, there is hate. The hatred of the weak for lucidity, because every weak mind needs illusions to survive. You need stories that ease the pain, of beliefs that camouflage cowardice, of routines that hide boredom. And when you appear, you break all of this. You don't need to talk much. Just look different. Just don't participate in the act. You enter into a superficial conversation and fall silent. They try to pull you into the drama, and you don't react. They want to make you part of the emotional game, and you watch, motionless. This is unforgivable, because their lucidity forces them to see themselves, and they are not ready. Nietzsche said that convictions are prisons, and when someone threatens these prisons, the prisoners are not grateful. They attack, and they attack with everything they have: sarcasm, disdain, social isolation. But what is at stake is much deeper. You represent the end of illusion. And most would rather die than face reality. Lucidity is cruel. She rips out the filters, shows the ugliness, reveals insignificance. But it is also what gives strength, clarity, independence. And that's why you can't be forgiven, because you dared to be free in a world where everyone learned to love each other through chains. His coldness is seen as cruelty, your rationality as a threat, your view as arrogance. But deep down, they all know you saw something they didn't have the courage to see, and for that, you will be attacked, not with weapons, but with irony, with contempt, with exclusion. But the true thinker does not seek approval. He has already done this morning. He has already lost everything that tied him to the affection of those manipulated. And in this morning, what Nietzsche called a free spirit was born. He is not someone who hates others. This is someone who no longer needs them. And that, for the weak, is unbearable, because if there is someone free, then it is possible to be free. And if it is possible to be free, they will have to face the fact that they chose slavery. You weren't born thinking. You were born accepting orders, accepting ready-made truths, accepting the world as it was delivered. They taught you to smile when you wanted to scream, lowering his eyes when he felt angry, apologizing for being authentic, molding yourself to fit. And you did it for a long time. He did it so well that he forgot he was pretending. You became the man they expected of you, educated, predictable, trained not to disturb, but there was something inside, something that never completely went away, a nuisance, a discomfort, an anguish that no distraction could erase. And then you started thinking, first in silence, then in denial, and finally in rupture. And when you really think, you start killing, not the others, but the domesticated version of himself, the social doll, the obedient actor, the exemplary son, the functional friend, the harmless man. Each reflection is a blade. Cut the threads that held you back, tear off the masks, tear off the fake hair, and death begins, silent, slow, painful. Nietzsche called this process transvaluation, the radical inversion of imposed values, the collapse of morals that held you captive, the symbolic death of the good man for the birth of the true man. But no one warns what comes next: loneliness, chaos, rejection, misunderstanding, because the world was made to keep programmed man alive. The routine, the relationships, the entire system, it's all about keeping you predictable. And now, you are no more. You say no where you used to say yes. You move away where you used to seek affection. You remain silent where you explained yourself before. And the world reacts with shock, with resistance, angry. But something inside you remains. A force that didn't exist before, something gross, cruel, indestructible. You start to notice the pain of this death is real, but the freedom that comes from it is even greater. You no longer depend on the eyes of others, no longer seek approval. You no longer need to pretend to be accepted. You died to the system, but it was born for you, and that changes everything, because the man who thinks, now think for yourself. No strings attached, as a script, no fear. He is the beginning of something new, the beginning of what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the man who recreates himself after destroying everything that was imposed. You died. He died in silence. He died rejected. He died without applause, without witnesses, without glory. But now, you come back, not like it was before, not as expected, not like you were taught. You come back as something new, like something they can no longer understand, nor control. You no longer seek to be accepted. No longer bow to the emotional logic of manipulation. Don't negotiate your lucidity. He no longer exchanges his vision for affection, and that makes you unbreakable. Nietzsche said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And now your why is clear. It is not external. It doesn't depend on anything. He is yours. And because of that, no one can take it away. You carry within you something that cannot be bought, cannot be taught, cannot be pretended. Conscience. You have become dangerous because you no longer fear losing, because he has already lost everything that was a lie, and everything that's left is real. Now, other people's words don't move you, offenses don't pierce you, rejection does not diminish you. You are not above the world, but it's outside of him, out of schedule, outside of expectations, out of reach, and that makes the same people who despised you now fear you, admire in silence, watch you from a distance. But you don't need that, because the man who was resurrected, it doesn't need to be seen, he sees. And seeing, at this level, is power. You see the game before it starts, see the intention behind the gesture, see manipulation where there used to be seduction, see the emptiness where there was once idolatry, and none of that captures you anymore. You have become psychologically shielded, not because he built walls, but because it destroyed the threads that pulled you. You don't react. You choose. You don't beg. You watch. You don't fall apart. You shape it. This is the man Nietzsche predicted. Not perfect, but conscious. Not pure, but intact. Not kind, but real. They fear the man who thinks, but they despair in the face of the man who has already thought and transformed himself. This is you now, and no one else can reach you, because you are no longer where they think you are. You have been programmed to obey, but he chose to think. He thought until he broke. You broke until you died, and you died until you rose again, and now reborn. You are the unbreakable. If this touched you, it's because something in you was already ready to tear off the fake skin, ready to see what no one else can stand, ready to be reborn as a free man. They will keep trying to control you with guilt, with drama, with conditioned affection, but now you see, and whoever sees it will never kneel again. If you made it this far, write in the comments, "I refuse to be controlled." Continue your journey. The next video is essential. Click now.